They say the land remembers, every step, every seed, every scar. And out here in Dry Creek, the soil holds more than just crops. It holds stories, some whispered through generations, others buried so deep you only find them when someone tries to take what isn't theirs. My name is Thomas Blake. I'm not a lawyer, not a politician. I'm a farmer. Always have been. And for 60 years I kept my head down and my land tended, until the day a red Jeep tore through my field, and a woman in heels told me I didn't belong on my own soil. That's when I remembered, this land might be quiet, but I'm not. Not anymore. My name is Thomas Blake, 60 years old, third-generation farmer, born and raised in the same patch of land my grandfather tamed with his bare hands. I've spent my entire life in Dry Creek, Colorado, where the air smells like pine in the morning and dust in the afternoon, where hands are calloused, not soft, and promises are worth more than contracts. Or at least, they used to be. Now they call it the new wine country. They build spas, yoga retreats, and houses with price tags that make my tractor look like a relic from another century. Maybe it is. Maybe I am. My wife Claire used to say change is like rain. You can hate it, but it's still coming. She passed away 2 years ago. Ovarian cancer. We caught it too late and paid dearly, not just in hospital bills, but in time. I would have sold the barn if it meant one more week with her. Hell, I almost did. Since then, I've kept to myself, grew soybeans and sorghum, paid off the medical debt, talked to the dog more than to people. Then Miranda Hale came into town. She wasn't like the others who moved into Echo Ridge, that shiny new subdivision built right up against my south field. Most of them were friendly, or at least curious. Kids would wave at my tractor from behind their triple-glazed windows. One or two even came by for sweet corn in July. But Miranda came with a clipboard and a vision board. And from the moment she was elected president of the HOA, she made it her mission to make my land feel like a mistake. The first letter came in April, a noise complaint about my early planting hours, then dust, then fertilizer odor, then the tractor tires disturbing the aesthetic balance of the shared boundary. The letters turned into meetings. The meetings turned into threats. Still, I kept quiet. I've never been much for conflict. I figured she'd get bored or move away like the rest. But Miranda wasn't going anywhere. And I should have known, people like her don't back off. They push until something breaks. The breaking came on a Tuesday morning in late August. Sky was clean, air was crisp. One of those rare days where everything smells like a fresh start. I was walking the east field, checking the crop line. My soybeans were tall, thick, and ready, probably the best yield I'd had in 10 years. After 3 rough seasons and losing Claire, it felt like maybe life was finally giving me a little something back. Then I heard it. The growl of a V6 engine, angry and out of place. Not the steady hum of farm equipment. This was something flashier, something that didn't belong out here. I walked up a ridge between rows and there it was. A bright red Jeep Rubicon bouncing recklessly over the soil. Oversized tires shredding rows of crop like they were ribbons, kicking up dust like a damned parade. For a second I thought some drunk teenager had veered off the road. But then I saw the driver. Blonde hair tied in a tight bun, oversized sunglasses, a crisp white blouse, and, God help me, a goddamn clipboard resting on the dashboard. Miranda Hale. I froze, heart pounding. Years of restraint unraveling in a single breath. I ran toward the destruction, waving my arms, shouting her name, but she didn't stop. Not until she hit a soft patch where the irrigation line had flooded the soil. Her precious Jeep sank into the mud with a groan. By the time I reached her window, she was on the phone, calm as ever. "Oh, hi, yes, tow it from the eastern edge of Echo Ridge, right next to that old farm," she said, eyes not even meeting mine. "And please hurry. I don't trust the local wildlife." I stared at her like she was a fever dream. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. She rolled down the window like she was at a drive-through. "Conducting a boundary inspection," she said matter-of-factly. "We've had reports that your crops may be encroaching onto community land. The HOA has every right to examine potential violations." I looked back at the wreckage, rows of soybeans flattened into pulp, irrigation trench ruptured, weeks of labor destroyed. "That's private property," I growled. "You just destroyed over $30,000 worth of my crop. This is criminal." Miranda took off her sunglasses, blinking slowly like I was some wild animal she was trying not to startle. "Relax, Mr. Blake. If you believe there's been damage, you're welcome to send a formal complaint. Our legal team will review it." She handed me a business card with the HOA logo embossed in gold. "Have a nice day," she said, before returning to her phone. Jake, the kid who helps me on weekends, pulled up in his old Chevy. His jaw dropped when he saw the mess. "Jesus, Mr. Blake, what the hell happened?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching, fuming. When the tow truck came, it ripped through 2 more rows of crop just to haul her out. I tried to stop them. They laughed. One of them even muttered something about backwards hicks. That night, I sat on the porch watching the sun melt behind the hills, and I didn't say a word. Not to Jake, not to the dog, not to the ghosts. I didn't sleep. By morning, I had filed a report with the sheriff, though they called it a civil dispute. My insurance adjuster came and shook his head. "It's going to be tough," he said. "Unless she admits fault, you're probably out of luck." I wasn't surprised. People like Miranda Hale don't admit fault. They build careers denying it. But then Emma came home, and that changed everything. Emma arrived just 2 days after the incident. She hadn't planned on coming back to Dry Creek until Thanksgiving, but I guess word travels fast when your grandfather ends up on a neighborhood gossip Facebook page titled, "This is Why We Need Fences." She walked through the front door with a suitcase in one hand, a laptop bag in the other, and fire in her eyes. "I read the HOA letter," she said without a hello, "and I read the sheriff's report. It's crap." I looked up from my coffee. "Nice to see you too." Emma had always been like Claire, sharp, relentless, unwilling to let things slide when they were wrong. She was in her final year of law school in Denver and had just accepted an offer from a mid-sized firm in Boulder. But right now, she looked ready to go full courtroom drama on Dry Creek. She pulled her laptop from her bag and set it on the kitchen table like it was a weapon. "I want to see every document you have on this land. Deeds, tax assessments, surveys, everything." I raised an eyebrow. "You think she's going to pay for the crop she flattened because we show her a deed?" Emma didn't smile. "No, I think there's something bigger here. That Jeep stunt was too bold. She didn't act like she was trespassing. She acted like she owned the damn field." I hesitated. "She said something about a boundary dispute." "And you believed her?" Emma said, almost offended. "People like Miranda weaponize doubt. They know if they can twist the truth just enough, they can bury you in legal costs until you give up." I hated how right she was. Still, we spent that afternoon digging through dusty boxes in the attic and the old safe behind the barn. Deeds dating back to 1926. A transfer from Grandpa Blake to my dad. A temporary loan of 10 acres to my uncle back in the 80s, followed by a buyback 2 years later that nobody outside the family had ever paid much attention to. Emma sat up straight, eyes narrowing. "This parcel," she said, tapping a faded survey map with red ink scrawled across one corner. "This is where the clubhouse is now." I looked closer. She was right. "Thought that was included in the land sale years ago." Emma shook her head. "It never was. That 10-acre plot was part of the temporary deed to Uncle Elias. Then it came back into the family. But get this, when the developer did their survey 17 years ago, they missed the legal distinction." I blinked. "You're telling me that whole fancy clubhouse was built on our land?" Emma nodded, already pulling up the county GIS database on her laptop. She cross-checked parcel IDs, title transfers, survey maps. Then she sat back and let out a slow whistle. "Grandpa," she said, "they built millions of dollars worth of HOA infrastructure on property that still legally belongs to you." It took me a long time to speak. I thought about the pool, the spa, the white-trimmed building where they held wine tastings and book clubs and HOA tribunals, the place that had become the beating heart of their suburban utopia, built on soil that still remembered my grandfather's footsteps. Emma looked at me, cautiously now. "We could take this to court, demand rent, back payments, or force them to remove the encroachment entirely. This is serious leverage." But I wasn't thinking about leverage. I was thinking about justice. "They crushed my field like it was decoration," I said quietly. "And then they lied, treated me like I was the trespasser." Emma leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the dying rows of soy. My voice came out low and certain. "I want them to feel what it's like when someone rips the ground out from under them." By the next morning, Emma had drafted a formal letter of demand, attaching the survey documents, GIS data, and deed history. She sent it to the HOA board and gave them 7 days to respond. The response came 2 days later. A courier delivered a thick envelope to the farmhouse, sealed with the HOA crest like it was some kind of medieval decree. Inside was a letter signed by Miranda and their legal counsel. We reject the Blake family's fraudulent claim to parcel number 108B. The HOA's position remains that all community structures were built on properly transferred land. Any attempt to interfere with Clubhouse property will result in criminal charges. Emma read it aloud, then tossed it on the table. "They're bluffing," she muttered. "They didn't address a single piece of our evidence. They're just hoping we back down." I didn't say anything. I just picked up the envelope, folded it neatly, and slid it into the trash. Then I turned to Emma. "Let's give them something to really be scared of." I didn't sleep much that week. Emma was tireless, filing injunction requests, scanning records, emailing every county clerk in the Tri-County area. Meanwhile, I was out in the barn, staring at the Caterpillar D6 that had sat under a tarp since Claire died. I hadn't touched the old bulldozer in nearly 4 years. Now I was oiling it up like it was preparing for war. Word had already started spreading. Someone, probably one of Miranda's lackeys, leaked our legal notice to the Echo Ridge Community Board. By the next morning, I was trending on the local Facebook group as the bitter old farmer trying to bankrupt the neighborhood. They called me greedy, crazy, a liar. But something unexpected happened. Some folks started reaching out, quietly at first. A woman named Sarah from Oak Lane stopped by to buy eggs. Then she asked, "Is it true what they say about the clubhouse? That it's on your land?" I nodded. She paused. "Good." And just like that, it began to shift. I wasn't just the crazy farmer anymore. I was the guy standing up to a machine they'd grown tired of, too. Emma told me to wait, told me to give the courts time to process the land ownership claim. But I wasn't interested in waiting anymore. The HOA sent us threats, legal notices, warnings. Then came the cherry on top, a $40,000 special assessment on all Echo Ridge residents to fund the legal defense against a fraudulent property claim. That was it. That was the moment the dam broke. On a Friday afternoon, I fired up the old cat. Emma stood in the barn doorway, arms crossed. "You're not really doing this," she said. "They're not listening to words," I replied, "so I'll speak in steel." We rolled toward the clubhouse at 5 miles an hour. The noise was deafening. The smell of fuel and dust churned up a storm behind us. As I approached the fence line where the manicured lawn met the gravel edge of my irrigation trench, I saw people gathering. Neighbors, board members, even a local reporter setting up a tripod. And there she was, Miranda Hale. Standing at the top of the clubhouse steps, flanked by 2 private security guards like she was the queen of suburbia. She pointed at me. "You're trespassing," she shouted. "This is a criminal act." I stopped the bulldozer just short of the fence, stepped down, walked calmly toward the crowd, holding a manila folder. "This," I said loud enough for the mic to catch, "is the deed to the land beneath half your clubhouse, including your wine cellar, your infinity pool, and that lovely pergola where you held a Vote for Miranda fundraiser last spring." Gasps. I laid the folder on the concrete. "You have 48 hours to vacate or negotiate. After that, I start pushing." The crowd began to stir. Some were filming on their phones. A few clapped. Miranda's face went pale. She motioned for her guards to move forward, but then something happened that I hadn't expected. Someone in the crowd shouted, "He's right. My cousin works at the county office." Then another, "Why didn't the developer check the land records?" And then, right as I turned to climb back onto the bulldozer, I heard a voice behind me, raspy, familiar. "You always were the stubborn one, Tommy." I froze. I turned slowly and saw Elias Blake, my older brother, the same brother we'd all thought had died in that mine collapse in 1989. He looked older, thinner, grayer, but it was him, alive, standing there holding a rolled-up survey document under one arm like it was a torch. My knees buckled slightly. "What the hell?" Elias smiled. "I heard someone was trying to erase my name from this town. Figured I should come back before they paved over what's left of us." The crowd gasped. Emma stood there, mouth open. Miranda stammered, This is ridiculous. Who is this man?" Elias stepped forward. "I'm the original deed holder to parcel 108B. Transferred it back to my brother in 1991 after I walked out of that mine with a broken leg and a whole lot of reasons to disappear. But I kept the paperwork, just in case someone like you ever showed up." He held up the deed, stamped, notarized, irrefutable. The next hour was chaos. News crews showed up. Residents shouted over each other. Miranda tried to spin the story, claiming she was misled by developers and that this wasn't about land, it was about values. I didn't say another word. I just climbed back into the bulldozer and turned the engine off. The message was loud and clear. We weren't done. Not yet. But we were no longer alone. That night, the lights didn't go out at the clubhouse. Cars lined the street. HOA board members came and went. I watched from my porch with a cup of coffee gone cold. Emma sat across from me, laptop open, still fielding emails from news outlets and residents. Her inbox was flooded. So was my voicemail. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. I didn't expect him to show up, I said quietly. Emma looked up. Uncle Elias? I nodded. He disappeared, Em. No letters. No goodbye. I thought he'd died. Hell, part of me thought maybe he wanted to. She hesitated. He said the mind collapse broke more than just bones. Said he felt like he didn't belong anymore. That coming back would have made things worse for you. I stared into the darkness. I could have used a brother when Mom passed, or when your grandma got sick, or when Claire... I trailed off. Emma closed her laptop and sat beside me. He came back now, she said. Maybe that means something. The next morning, I found a letter slid under my door. No envelope. Just HOA stationery and Miranda's sharp, slanted handwriting. Mr. Blake, the HOA board has voted to reject your claims in full. Any further attempts to interfere with Clubhouse property will be met with immediate legal action. We are filing for a restraining order and civil suit by Monday. Sincerely, Miranda Hale, President, Echo Ridge, HOA. Emma read it and let out a bitter laugh. She still thinks this is a PR battle. She's not wrong, I said. To her, truth doesn't matter. Perception does. But perception was starting to turn against her. That same morning, an anonymous HOA member leaked a voice recording to the local news. It was Miranda at a closed board meeting saying, "We can delay the Blake suit until winter. He's old, he'll cave, or he'll die. Either way, the land's ours in the end." By noon, the clip had 50,000 views on Twitter. By evening, residents were protesting on their own lawn. Saturday morning, the HOA board scheduled an emergency community meeting, open to all residents. They tried to host it at the clubhouse, but the crowd was too big, so they moved it to the high school gym. Miranda walked in late, flanked by legal counsel, wearing a navy blue pantsuit and a look that said, "This is beneath me." I walked in with Elias on one side and Emma on the other. It felt like the whole town turned to look at us, some with curiosity, some with guilt, some with hope. Miranda took the mic first. We are here today to address a situation that has unfortunately been blown out of proportion by a series of misunderstandings, poor record-keeping, and hostile actors who do not have this community's best interests at heart. I took a deep breath, stepped forward. No misunderstandings, I said. You built your crown jewel on land that was never yours. You've tried to drown us in paperwork and public shame, all while pretending this is just about some old farmer making noise. I paused. Well, I am an old farmer, but I'm not the one who drove through someone else's field with a damn Jeep. A few people chuckled. Someone clapped. Miranda's face tightened. Emma came up and laid out our evidence, the deeds, the surveys, the maps. Elias pulled out a notarized affidavit confirming the land was never transferred, never sold. A former city clerk even stood up from the crowd and confirmed the parcel had always been exempt from HOA zoning. Then came the turning point. A resident, James Liu, a software engineer who'd just moved in, stood and asked a question no one expected. If the Blakes are right, and it seems like they are, what happens if they bulldoze the clubhouse? Do we lose access? The room went quiet. I cleared my throat. No, I said, but you'll have to pay for it. We offered a lease, $18,000 per year, which is cheap for commercial use of private land. We asked for compensation for the crops destroyed, for a public apology, for respect. Emma added, and for Miranda's resignation, because this board deserves better. Miranda snapped. This is extortion. And that's when Raymond Soto, HOA vice president, retired firefighter, stood up from the front row. No, Miranda, this is justice, and you've embarrassed this whole community. The crowd erupted in applause. The next morning, Miranda packed up and left Dry Creek. No press release, no apology, just the squeal of tires on asphalt and a for sale sign hammered into her front lawn by noon. That same afternoon, the HOA board, now under Raymond's leadership, came to our farmhouse with a new proposal. A formal lease agreement, a $55,000 check for crop damage, a signed apology to be printed in the town paper, and an offer to partner on a community garden using the same edge of land Miranda once tried to fence off. I took the deal. But not because of the money, because it meant Elias could finally put his name back on something other than a ghost story, because it meant Emma didn't fight for nothing, because it meant maybe, just maybe, this town could still remember what the soil was for. There's a certain quiet after the fight is over, not peace, just silence. But just a few feet beyond the wreckage, the rest of the crop still stood tall, defiant in the sunlight. I walked through them, dragging my hand along the stalks like I used to do when Claire was alive, and Emma was small enough to ride on my shoulders. That morning, I wasn't thinking about lawsuits or leases or bulldozers. I was thinking about roots, and how they hold fast, even when everything above the ground gets torn apart. The check from the HOA cleared, not that I ever doubted it would, once Miranda was gone. The apology was printed on the front page of the Dry Creek Sentinel, just below a photo of Elias and me shaking hands under the shadow of the Clubhouse pergola. They spelled our names right, which is about all I can ask from the local press. More surprising was how many residents came to see me that week, not with complaints or questions, but with stories. One woman said her son had grown up thinking soybeans were just something in tofu. Another man, a teacher, asked if he could bring his students out to see what a working irrigation system looked like. Emma had an idea, of course. She always does. We cleared a patch of land near the shared boundary and built a small shed, put in raised beds, a compost bin, hung a handmade wooden sign over the fence post, the Blake Grove, for growing things that matter. It was her idea to call it that. I didn't argue. Every Saturday we host community hours. Emma teaches the kids how to test soil pH and why worms matter. I show the adults how to tell a good seed from a bad one, how to listen to the wind before a storm. They listen. Really listen. Sometimes I catch one or two just standing there looking out over the fields like they're seeing the land for the first time, not as background but as belonging. Elias decided to stay. He moved into the old hunter's cabin near the woods, the one Dad built with his bare hands back in '61. The roof leaks and the stove hisses, but it's quiet, peaceful. The two of us don't talk about the missing years much, don't have to. We plant together in the mornings, fix tools in the afternoons, and share coffee on the porch when the sun dips low. He said something the other night that stuck with me. "You know," he muttered, staring at the skyline, "for a guy who wanted to disappear, you sure raised some hell." I laughed. Maybe I did, but hell was never the point. Miranda Hale listed her house for sale 2 weeks after the meeting. No one came to say goodbye. Last I heard, she moved to Arizona, joined another HOA, and was already clashing with a neighbor over flag sizes. Some things never change, but here they did. Not overnight, not perfectly. But there's a new understanding now between the asphalt and the soil, between the manicured lawns and the rows of beans. A truce, a balance. This land taught me a lot in my 60 years. That good things grow slow, that wounds take time, that justice, like farming, is less about fury and more about patience, consistency, truth. It also taught me that sometimes, to be heard, you have to fire up the old bulldozer. Not to destroy, but to remind people where the foundation really lies. In the roots, in the history, in the hands that shaped the land long before blueprints and bylaws came along. And if one day I'm gone and Emma's the one walking this field, if some new HOA tries to redraw the lines again, I hope they remember. This isn't just dirt, it's legacy, it's labor, it's home.